gotta appreciate the fit. Okay, ready? Ready? 3, 2, 1. There we go. Hey y'all, it's Tate, and this is Bookish Constellations. And my microphone is on. Today we're doing recent reads, meaning books that I've read since like November, which is also books I've read since like August, because I had 3 months where I didn't read anything. So I have 17 books to talk about, so we're just gonna get into it. The first book I read since I last updated you on literally anything was Ramona Blue by Julie Murphy. This is a book that basically follows our main character Ramona, who lives in a small town that got hit by Hurricane Katrina, like when it happened in like 2000, whenever that was. And it's about her dealing with that in a way, dealing with family issues of feeling like she's never going to be able to leave this town because she has to take care of her sister, who recently became pregnant, and just taking care of her family in general. It also deals with her realizing that maybe she doesn't just like girls the way that she always thought she did, because she's now getting a crush on a boy. I liked this book. It was the first book I read in like 3 months, so the fact that I got through it kind of proves that I did like it, at least somewhat. I liked the representation we had in this. I liked how we portrayed Ramona, that she was definitely like a flawed person and was a teenager, but could still have some really good traits and be really likable. I did enjoy the romance. Sometimes it was hard for me to get into it just because I am really sex repulsed, and so whenever it went towards sex, I was kind of backed away a little bit. The one thing that I can't still look past in this book very much is cheating. So you know this like literally within 10 pages of the book, so it's not a spoiler. But before Ramona starts getting a crush on her guy friend, she is in a relationship of sorts with this girl named Grace, who's there for the summer. But Grace, where she actually lives, has a boyfriend, and they're both aware of this, and they still are basically in a relationship, hooking up and kissing and things like that. And it's never actually discussed properly. They clearly show it as cheating, but they never actually make Ramona say, yeah, that was wrong, I shouldn't have done that, that was cheating. And she never really gets consequences for it. Even at one point in the book when Grace like comes back, it's not addressed as that was bad, and it just left a really bad taste in my mouth, because don't cheat, y'all. The second book I read, which I finished the day before winter finals, which was a great idea on my part, was Crier's War by Nina Varela. This is obviously the ARC version. Here is the final version, which is so beautiful. I need it, I want it. Crier's War is set in this world where humans made autome, so like automatons, robots kind of, but then the autome got too powerful and took over, and now they are like the rulers and the humans are the servants and treated as lesser and all that kind of stuff. This follows 2 characters. One of them is Crier, who is the daughter of the king, sovereign king of this kingdom area, but she has a real fascination with humans and wants humans to have more rights. And then we have Ayla, who is a human, and her family was killed by Autome, and she desperately wants revenge, and the way she wants to get revenge is to kill the king's daughter, Crier. But they meet, and Ayla ends up being put as Crier's handmaiden, and gay shit ensues. And so does, like, what's the word? That shit when people... Political intrigue and corruption and secrets start getting unwound and figured out. And it's so good, y'all. I loved it so much. It's so gay, and it's such an interesting world, and I loved how he set it up. And I loved all the characters, and I loved the relationships, and I loved the progression of the romance, and it was so angsty and so good. I want someone to think of me even the tiniest bit as gay as Crier thinks about Ayla. Literally, Ayla breathes, and she recites like sapphic poetry, like Sappho level poetry about it. And and Ayla's just such a disaster gay, and I just love it so much, and it ended on such a cliffhanger. And I need Ironheart right now. I can't believe it's not until September. Oh, I'm so sad. But it's really, really good. Go buy it. Please go support queer fiction by authors of color. So good. So good. Also, the cover for Ironheart. The next one is Goddess of the Hunt by Shelby Eileen. This is a poetry collection that focuses a lot on like Greek gods and goddesses, mostly just Artemis, and it has a lot of Aero Ace feels, a lot about feminism and stuff like that. I enjoyed this book, I guess. I'm not a Martian poetry fan at all. I've tried time and time again to like it. I just can't get into the style. So I just kind of had to ignore the style and just read it straight through and not think about the style, and that helped. I loved the Era Ace feels. I loved the messages we got in there. I'm just not a big fan of the formatting, so it wasn't like overwhelmingly powerful for me. But if you do like that style, I think you'll also like this. The next one is Learning Curves by Sally Simkis. This, I feel like you have to describe in like AO3 tags. So it's gay, mutual pining, college AU, fluff, no plot. That's this book. And food and baking. But like, truly this book did not have much plot. It is genuinely just 90 pages of cute mutual pining fluff between two girls, one of whom is Latina and fat. And it was really cute. Like, if you want something that has like a solid plot, probably not for you, but if you want a cute book that, by the way, doesn't have any smut, so for fellow sex repulsed people, that's gonna be great. And if you just like literally just cute, teeth-rotting cuteness for 90 pages, go for it. And it's queer, so support that. The next one is Every Heart a Doy by Seanan McGuire. I have actually read this book once before. I read it in like 2018, and I had mixed feelings about it then. The problem the first time reading this book was that by the cover and by what little I knew of this book, I did not expect it to be dark, and it is a dark book. So I was a little thrown for a loop, and that made me not enjoy it quite as much. This time, knowing that it was dark, I got more into it and I liked it more than I did last time. There were still some things that I just couldn't quite figure out why I didn't like it, but I was just sometimes just felt a little bit like I was fighting with it a little bit. But I did enjoy it, and I will probably continue with the series since they're so short. I didn't love it as much as some people do. It didn't like blow my mind. It didn't feel as good as some of the hype it's gotten, but I liked it, so yeah. No. Ah, shit. The next book, or 6 books I read, I guess, were the Saga volumes number 1 through 6 by Brian K. Vaughan. I didn't technically read all these, like, in a row. I read some of the other books before after this, but it's just easy to put them all at once. This is an adult graphic novel series that basically is about these two characters who are soldiers on opposite sides of this war that is gone not just from their own homeworlds but across like galaxies. But these two soldiers actually fall in love and run away, and now they're being chased by, you know, people who are calling them defectors and traitors, and they have a child and they're trying to protect them, and there are also other subplots with people who are trying to get to them, or people who are just lots of characters and intertwining subplots. There are some trigger warnings for this series. The R slur is used 2 different times. Neither time it was properly challenged. The first time it wasn't challenged at all, and the second time it was challenged, but the person who said don't say that then referred to their child as special needs, and the person who used the slur brushed it off. Also, a good note that the character who said this was not a villain. This was one of our 2 main characters. This was a hero who said this. There's also a lot of blood and very gory and explicit violence. The F slur is also used 2 different times. One time it is used in reference to gay people, and one time it is not used, but neither time it was challenged. There is discussion of slavery and also you see slaves. There's also pedophilia. There's a mention of rape, and there's also mention of suicide. And there's a lot of sex, often very explicit, and like shown on page, not just explicit like talk of it, but explicit like you see it. I definitely skipped many a page or glanced over many a page reading this because I can't. I'm sex repulsed all the time, but especially if it's visual, I can't do it. So if that's something you're sensitive about for any reason, I would maybe not go into this because you can't avoid anything without sex. Okay, how do I feel about this series? I think the reason why I read so many of these volumes is because the plot is just so good. Like, the plot just really keeps you moving, and it's so interesting and has such good world building, and it just never lets you rest and always keeps you on your toes. And because of that, you like finish one part and you're like, ah, shit, I have to keep going. Because honestly, with like how explicit the sex was, and with some of the things like the slurs being used without being challenged, I didn't really want to continue, but then I was like, ah, shit, I need to go. But I did stop after volume 6 just because I had other things to read, and I now haven't really had an urge to keep going because I forgot where it ended, and I'm like, I don't really want to see it again. I did feel like this was the kind of graphic novel where they're like, oh, we're adult, so we need to be extra edgy, so we need to add in some slurs and add in some like really explicit violence and some really awful things just for the sake of being awful. And some things they handled well, and some things I think they didn't really handle. So I'm just kind of torn about this series in general, and I would definitely advise that you like look into it before you go into it. Ah, yay! The next book I read was Collateral Damage by Taylor Simmons. First of all, if you don't follow Taylor on Twitter, do it. Actual sunshine angel princess incarnate. Like, she's literally Rapunzel as a person in the best way. This book is set in this city where there are superheroes, but there's like 4 of them at a time. Like, they give them superpowers, and then every couple of years they switch them out with other people. Our main character is not one of these super variants. It is Meg Sawyer, who's just like a barista who doesn't want to get crushed under falling rock or have her house like destroyed during a super variant battle, and she actually doesn't really like the super variants, and she's just tired of all the shit. But her kind of plan to avoid the super variants at all costs kind of doesn't work, because one day she finds a super variant dead, and it looks like they've been murdered. So she gets roped into this mystery of what's happening and starts kind of uncovering some secrets and some corruption and things like that, along with the girlfriend of the super variant who died, Juniper, and a little bit with her best friend, Oliver. I adore this book so much. This book is so much fun. It's so fun. Meg is so sarcastic and snarky and funny, but also has just a heart of gold. Even if she likes to claim she doesn't care about people, she cares so fucking much. And she's such a wonderful character, and I want to be here, but I also want to marry her, and it's a problem. And she and Oliver, the best friends, there's not even a hint of romance. We never have to deal with some subplot of like them maybe having feelings or like other people thinking that they have feelings for each other. They just get to exist and be adorable, sweet best friends. The writing is really like easy to get through and very snarky and fun. The plot was very interesting. I was enjoying the world. I liked the plot twist we had. We also get We also got to have this cute little rat named Trash Face, whom I love so much. And it was just so much fun. Like, it was just such an enjoyable read. I was laughing, I was doing, I was smiling. It was just a great time. I think the only thing I really had any sort of like issue with was I did wish that we would have talked a little bit more about Juniper's grief. It felt like it didn't get talked about as much as I would have liked it to be. We had a little bit of an arc, but it didn't feel like it got mentioned. It kind of felt like it got talked about in the beginning, and then we kind of ignored it for a while, and I wish we could have seen a little bit more of her grieving. But other than that, so much fun, and I'm so excited to read anything Taylor Simmons put out. It could be a packet on how to change your toilet pipes, and I would read it in a second. On my Twitter, it'd be like, read Taylor Simmons' packet on how to fix your toilet pipes. Like, I would go all the way. Risk it all. Risk it all. And that's just facts and facts. Also, if you've been noticing this, it's a little tattoo that's still healing of a trident. Thank you. It looked really weird in the camera because it's still healing, so it's kind of scabby, so it looks like some of it is gone. But it's not. It's not. It's fine. It's cute. We're living. So yes, read this, please. Also, it has a few little illustrations. Look at this. The next one is Aphrodite Made Me Do It by Trista Mateer. This is another modern poetry kind of collection that also has some like art, kind of like poster, inspirational quote poster style art in it. It talks a lot about love and has a lot of queer feels in it. From what I remember, it switches a bit between like gods and goddesses like Aphrodite and like the author writing about their own experiences. I liked this, like every other modern poetry. I didn't vibe with the formatting, so I had to just think of it as a sweet self-help book, and that helped a lot. And I thought the art was very cute, and I still had a fun time, and I still highlighted some things that I liked, so I'd still like recommend it if you like that kind of stuff. But if you don't like modern poetry, I wouldn't put your hopes way too high. You gotta kind of keep them a little lower so that you're not expecting too much from the formatting. Oh. The next one, I don't know if anyone is gonna be surprised about my feelings about this book, and it's Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I read this book like 4 different times. I think like 3 times fully, and then like 18 times of just the ending because I love tears. If you don't know what this is about, face value, it's about this boy whose mom has cancer, and one night this monster, this kind of tree monster, comes to him and starts telling him stories, and in return it asks for the truth, and it comes every single night at the exact same time and keeps telling him these kind of morally gray stories and says that he's trying to help him. Really what this is about is this boy trying to cope with the fact that his mother is dying, and this monster is there to help. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I love this book so much. It is so good. It is so interesting. It is so sweet. It is so heartbreaking. It's so hopeful. I have never, of every single time I've read this book, even when I've been like, I'm gonna read the last like 5 pages, I have never managed to not cry. It fucks you up in such a good way. It's so good. I will say, obviously, if you're someone who cancer is a really hard or sensitive topic, or losing a family member, bullying, things like that, be very careful going into this. I think that it handled it really, really well, but that doesn't mean that it's a book that you should be reading necessarily. I don't know if every version has it, but definitely this version that's kind of a little bit more of a box. It has a lot of drawings in it. Some of them are kind of full-page drawings, like this beautiful thing. Some of them are half pages. Some of them are kind of like spread throughout. And some of them are just little things in the corner or along the edges. They're very beautiful, and this book is very beautiful, and I just think that everyone should read it because it's so beautiful. Just read this book, and if you do, and you know me on Twitter, come talk to me about it. Let's cry together. The ending of this book, it's so good. I love him. The next book I read is entirely because of Loose from Light Reading, and this is Daddy Longlegs by Jean Webster. This is not actually a book about a spider. I thought it was. It's not. What this book is actually about is it's a classic that's about this girl whose name I cannot remember, who lives at an orphanage, and then one day she finds out that this mysterious man has offered to pay for her to go to college and just give her money to live a nice life, and all he asks for in return is that she sends him letters once in a while to update him. And so the story just kind of is her letters to this man, who she calls Daddy Longlegs because she saw him, the back of him once, and he looked just really long and gangly like a spider, and so she called him Daddy Longlegs. It's very funny that they call this book Daddy Longlegs because it's kind of a little bit of a false advertising, but it just follows her going to school and learning about herself and trying to figure out who Daddy Longlegs is and finding love and things like that. I feel like I have very little feelings about this book just because I was reading it and I was feeling good, and then I finished it and I was like, cool. That was a thing that I did, and that was good, and now I'm done. I still might listen to the musical because that's what Luce thinks that I really need to listen to, so I might try that out. I may also be the only person on the planet who didn't figure out who Daddy Longlegs was by halfway through the book. But that's fine. That's fine. It's fine. Oh god. Oh god. Oh. The next book I read was House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. This is like a dark, creepy retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, that we have this family who has 12 daughters, and over the past 3 years, 3 of them have died. One was supposedly for an illness, one was supposedly by suicide, and one was, I think, also an accident. But one of the daughters, Annalay, starts to realize that maybe these weren't actually accidents and someone is trying to kill off the children in this family one by one, and so she starts trying to unravel this mystery, and it is meant to be kind of like a really creepy, suspenseful, little bit of horror book. So I didn't like this book. I didn't. I was really hoping that I was gonna like this book. I had high hopes because in my brain it was gonna be this spooky, creepy book all about sister love and figuring out this mystery. That's not what I got. What I got was a fucking romance book. I did not sign up for a romance book, especially this kind of romance. This is my least favorite kind of romance, possibly. Besides, obviously, ones that are I don't know, literally, crazy problematic. Because we meet this love interest whose name I can't remember, and I'm not gonna look through this book to remember. It was like this mysterious stranger who shows up, and like she doesn't know about his past, and he does some kind of weird things, but she also falls in love with him the moment she sees him, and they're like, ugh. And like every time he comes in, she like, ugh. Literally the first time she sees him, he's talking and she's thinking about what his lips would feel on hers or on her neck. I'm like, ew, God, you just met this guy. Pay attention to what he's saying. Stop being horny on Maine. And then half this book just turns into the romance, and it took so much time, and I didn't think that it was well done, and it was so cheesy in the way that was just like, stop. And it overcame the big plot, and it overcame like the sister bonds. That was really what I was wanting, and what a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling should have. The pacing was also kind of weird, that in some spots it was so unbelievably slow, and then we tried to cram a bunch of plot in the end that I wasn't ready for. The mystery was also sometimes more confusing than it was intriguing, and half the time we kind of forgot about the mystery. Like, it was like technically we were looking at the mystery, but it just felt like it was going nowhere. The ending of this book was so confusing and so cheesy, and it just left me feeling the same way I felt the rest of the book, which was, why? Why am I reading this? What's happening? I also want to say a couple things that are spoilers, because I'm just dying to say something about this book. So I will put a timestamp of when I'm going to stop saying spoilers. I was praying that the love interest was going to be the murderer. I wanted him to be the murderer so bad. It was so obvious that he could have been the murderer. Like, he has all this creepy shit. I'm like, also, he was kind of stalking her. And we all were like, oh, cute, whatever. I'm like, no! Weird. Did we learn nothing from Twilight? It was also just so cheesy. And I didn't know why they liked each other, why everyone thought that they had chemistry. And the ending. First of all, I hate the trope of people dying just to come back like 5 pages later. Like, stop fucking with our emotions. Stop, like, if someone's gonna die, have them die. Stop, like, lightening and diluting the feeling of characters dying. It just, I don't like it. And also just the ending itself, that like, it should have been ending with her and her sisters. This is a book about sisters, and it said it ends with him magically coming back to life and saying something super cheesy and them kissing. And it was like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Like, ugh, I hate it. Also, the ending, I still don't really know what's going on in this book. Did someone please tell me, I'm serious, did their dad survive? Because they were talking about him being trapped, and then it like burned down, and no one said he got out, but there was also no reaction. Like, no one mourned the dad. No one was like saying, oh, our dad died, or oh, our dad got, like, they just didn't mention him. Did we forget to ask if the dad was alive? Also, if he did die, she's asking for her boyfriend back and not her father? Bitch. Also, the plot twist that he's actually like the son of a god was just like, we didn't need it. Like, it was so cheesy and I hated it. And I feel like, I don't know, I guess I just didn't love the fact that the villain was just, I don't know. I guess you could maybe say that like the villain is like a symbol of girl hate, and that's bad, but it was also like she felt very one-dimensional, and I just didn't really like how he did her. It just felt like it was just like, now we're gonna info dump everything that happened instead of you like being able to piece together what happened. You know, like I feel like there should have been more things for us to look up. The intention of just, oh, I was mad because he liked someone else. I didn't get why this character specifically, that was enough for her to literally murder someone and make a deal with the devil. Like, there are other guys, I just didn't get it. I will say though, the birth scene where it ends up actually being like the demon god's child and they had eaten the baby, and now okay, I will admit, that part was kind of cool. But everything else, I was just, all I wanted was a spooky and creepy mystery around sister bonds, and I didn't get it, and I'm sad. The next book I read was Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Nyan. This is the sequel to Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyan, so I won't tell you the plot of this one. The plot of the first one is basically, there's this world, there are basically 3 different kind of castes. The highest caste are Moon, which are demons. The second highest is Steel, which are half human, half demon, and then Paper caste are the lowest, which are humans. And our main character is Lei, who is a human, and she, because of her like yellow, cool, gold eyes, gets stolen away from her family and taken to the palace to basically be one of the king's concubines, basically, which are called paper girls. But in the process, she starts to fall in love with another paper girl and starts to figure out maybe a way to try to escape or to take down the king. So, this book, I enjoyed it. I still held on to some of my things from the last book, that some of the world building is not as fleshed out as it could be, but I still really enjoyed this one. I liked that we got to travel and see more places than just the palace. I thought that was really fun. I liked that things got messier and more kind of morally complex, and that you had more great characters and more tension between different characters, even between Lei and Ren, which like made me sad, but also was really good. I loved the progression of the relationship. I loved the kind of getting higher stakes. I was really grateful that we also still kept discussing the trauma that these girls went through in the past book, that we didn't brush it aside, that we still were like, yeah, they escaped, but they still have all this to deal with. The fight scenes were very movie-like, and I really liked them. It had a really well-written last few pages of a cliffhanger, and so now I really need this last book. I think it's Fate and Fury or something. Girls of Fate and Fury. I might be wrong, but I'm very excited for it. Nonetheless, it's gonna be so good. The next one I read was Captain Marvel, Volume 1 by Kelly Sue DeConnick. This is just, you know, Captain Marvel. If you don't know Captain Marvel, I don't know how to explain her. She's Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, love of my life. This one follows Captain Marvel as she's supposed to go to this planet that has a sickness affecting it, and originally supposed to try to convince them to leave the planet, despite the people not budging and not wanting to leave. And then when she gets there, she starts to realize that there's more to it, and there's more corruption, and there's things to discover with these people. And I thought that it had some really good commentary on some social issues, colonialism, on how much we fucking hate men in power and billionaires and things like that, on immigrants, on refugees, and things like that. I thought it was really well done. I will say, as someone who knows that Captain Marvel is a lesbian, it was really weird that she had a boyfriend. I think that she was dating Falcon, but I could be wrong. But I was like, huh? My Carol Danvers? Dating a boy? My Carol Danvers? Huh? But it was good, and I'll probably continue because I love my Carol Danvers, and I thought that it was well written. The next book, and the last book that I read in 2019, was The Miraculous Journey of Edward Sulain by Kate DiCamillo. This is just a middle grade children's kind of book that follows this really selfish and unloving China rabbit named Edward Tulane, who gets lost from his very loving owner and ends up going on a journey being tossed around between all these different owners and learning to love people and finding himself in a better way. This book is so sweet and so moving and so cute. It just made me very happy, and it was very soft, and it almost made me cry, and it's just such a good and wholesome thing to me. I think that we should all read it. And it's also a very fast read. I mean, first of all, it's not written very high level, quote unquote. It's not super complicated writing, and it's also like pretty large writing. So it has pretty large writing. It also sometimes has pictures on some of the pages, and whenever there's a chapter, it's like page to show the chapter number and a picture, and then it'll have nothing on the other side, and then it starts. So there's like, it says it's like, I think almost 200 pages, but it doesn't feel like that long. If you haven't read this yet, read this and read other Kate DiCamillo books, because she is my childhood hero. The first 5 books I read in 2020 were Percy Jackson and the Olympian series by Rick Riordan. If you followed my channel at all recently, you're very aware of this, and I'm not going to talk about them because I already have several videos talking about them, which the last one, which will have Last Olympian and Battle of the Labyrinth, will hopefully be out soon. Don't count on it, but it will happen. I haven't abandoned it. So if you want to hear me talk about those, I'll put a link in the description to the playlist that has all of those videos. But just know that I love them as much as I did as a kid. Fucking slaps. The second to last one I have to talk to you about is Dear Martin by Nick Stone. This is a book about this kid named Justice, who, after he has a really bad experience with police, started writing letters to Martin Luther King Jr. to try to become more like Martin and to figure out how to act in situations like that, how to, you know, figure out how to fight back, but also how to just be a better person. So some of it is in letters to Martin, and some of it is just his life. I liked this book. I really liked some of the themes we brought in. I liked that it didn't really hold back on its stuff. I liked some of the grayness that we talked about. There were some things that I didn't like as much. Basically during this book there were just some things that I just couldn't figure out quite what was making me upset. I will say I did notice that Justice's love interest, I can't remember her name right now, but she's white, and she often kind of became like the voice for black people, and I was noticing that. I was like, just like they can do it. And I was aware while I was reading this that there were not a lot of women of color and like black women talked about, and the few that were, like, it was this mom who doesn't get talked about much and is in a lot of ways painted in a bad light, and then there's his on and off girlfriend who also doesn't get painted in a very good light, and I kind of was aware of that. But again, like, I'm not the person who gets to decide like if that was well written or not. So what I would say is, if you want to know more about some things that were done well and not done well in Dear Martin, I will link a video that has a review of Dear Martin that I think discusses this stuff really well, and it is by a black reviewer, so please go watch that. It was a really, really good review. The last book that I've read by the time I'm doing this is Pet by Kweke Emesi. This is a book set in this town called Lucille that has gotten rid of all the monsters. And by monsters, I don't mean fantasy monsters, I mean like real life monsters, like billionaires and corrupt police officers and people who are racist and people who don't give space for immigrants and abusers and things like that. And so there aren't supposed to be any more monsters in Lucille. It's supposed to be a completely safe space. But Jam accidentally finds/releases this creature called Pet, who says that they have come here in search of a monster. And so Jam is trying to help Pet to uncover where this monster is and dealing with the idea that Lucille is not actually as safe and perfect as they feel like they are. Y'all, I was a little nervous going into this book. I've read another book by this author and it was Freshwater, but I had very mixed feelings on that book. But I did like the writing style, so I was hopeful that I was gonna like Pet. And I was right, I did like Pet. My feelings when I finished this book were holy shit. And I think that's very accurate. First, some trigger warnings. There is a mention of rape. I don't think the word rape itself is used, but you can tell that they're talking about rape. There's also blood, there's dissociation that's like called dissociation and you see it happening multiple times. There's also child abuse, which you don't see in the moment, but you do see the ramifications and the physical effects of it, and it's discussed. And there's also discussions on, you know, things that monsters do, abuse and sexual assault and racism and a lot of other things. It doesn't go in deep about most things besides child abuse, but they are mentioned a bit. This book was so good. First of all, the representation was really nice in this book. Our main character, Jam, is a trans girl, and it like talks about it very openly, and she gets the opportunity to, you know, she was raised in a place that for the most part is a very nice place. So when she first, you know, said, no, I'm a girl, I'm a girl as a little kid, her parents immediately were like, okay, we're gonna get you on hormone blockers, we're gonna get you this, we're gonna do that, we're gonna be able to get you your surgery, we're gonna start immediately referring to you by the pronouns you want to use and let you choose your name. And it's like, it's so beautiful, and we never see her get like dead named or misgendered or anything. The closest we ever get is like when it talks about when she first expressed that she was a girl, it was like someone called her a handsome little boy and she started screaming, girl, 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 and that's it. After that, we never misgender or dead name her, and it is wonderful and beautiful. But we also don't ignore the fact that she's trans. Like, we mentioned stuff of, like, it talks about her getting surgery and experiences of that, and like her implant, and like it doesn't forget about it, but we don't have to have trans suffering, which is fucking wonderful. There's also is a minor character who is in a wheelchair, and there's just so much black rep. Like, my assumption is that no one in this town is white. Definitely none of the characters that we actually talk with are white, and from my idea of like everyone is black, which is like fucking awesome. Jam and her best friend Redemption are such sweet best friends, and they care about each other so much, and we don't have to do any little like, ooh, are you two dating? Like, we don't have to have any of that. It's never like thought of in that way, but they still love each other so much, and they would do so much for each other, and it makes me so happy. And this book does not pull punches, and I love that it doesn't. I love that it discusses these things openly. And something I really love about this book is on the back it says like, there are no monsters in Lucille. So I thought it was gonna be fantasy monsters, but it's like, no, these are normal people. We may be bringing in this strange otherworldly creature to help fight it, but we're not gonna pretend that the monsters are real and that they're here and that we still have to fight them. We're not gonna pretend that billionaires aren't monsters. We're not gonna pretend that these horrible people aren't monsters. And I loved the writing of this. It's so, oh, I just love how Okeke writes. That was the one thing in Freshwater that I loved, and this, it worked so well. And the way that they discuss things I thought was really good, and some of the moral grayness of what to do with monsters and hard truths, and it was just so good. So good. The one thing that I still can't quite figure out, maybe that's just because I didn't understand something properly, is there's this thing that goes on throughout the book, and it's not really a spoiler, but like Jam can kind of like feel the house's feelings, that she can kind of feel like the house kind of, not directly speaking to her, but she can kind of get vibes and feelings from the house of like that it's tense or things like that. And from what I remember, there was an explanation, and so I don't know why that was involved, but like it didn't bother me. I'm just like, I wonder if I missed something. Also, please just appreciate this cover. This is the paperback. The hardcover I will put right here, which is also beautiful, but I just love it so much, and it's such a wonderful book, and you should read it because it is such a good commentary on our world without, I don't know, without sugarcoating it, and has such wonderful representation, so well written. It's also really short. It's like 200 something pages. Yeah, it's like barely over 200 pages, so it's a very quick read. I read it all in one night. Like I literally sat down and said, I'm gonna just start this, and then I was done, and it was 3 a.m, and oh, so good. So good. Okay, that is all the books that I have to talk to you about. Hopefully I will update you sooner than like 7 months next time, but you never know with me. I hope that y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, please tell me. If you didn't, you can tell me, but please don't be mean. I'm fragile. In conclusion, support queer books by authors of color, especially queer authors of color. That's the takeaway. Bye!